Another week, another race. This time it's Daily Race B in Fuji Speedway, but it's the short track. This time around the car was provided to us by the game. It was the Volkswagen Scirocco, something along those lines. So I expected the pace between everybody to be quite the same, but I didn't realize when everybody drives the same speed, it can be quite the recipe for disaster. I didn't get to put down a really good lap, but it was enough to keep me in the upper midfields, in most cases in the top 3 of the grid. I like the track, but in an FF car it's not that easy to drive, especially the third sector where a lot of people you will see will screw up. Coming into the first turn, I brake just a little bit too early and I'm on the outside, so the driver behind me slides into the inside and I forget how close he was, so I turn right into him. But I really don't know how I ended up getting a penalty for it, because most of these days people get penalties. People don't get penalties for pushing people off the track even. This was the type of race where if you get caught in a group of drivers that are fighting with position, all the others at the front will just get away really fast, and catching up is almost impossible unless they have penalties to serve. With only 4 laps, there was very little you can do if you're left behind. This third sector right here is where people screw up the most, and also where you can get on the offensive as long as you're on the racing line, because it's all about throttle control. And that's difficult to do. As you can see, I go sideways into another driver because I got on the throttle just a little bit too early. Even if I get the position, it really doesn't matter, as I had a penalty to serve just before the second lap starts. And this can hurt you quite a lot because it's on the main straight and the slipstream was incredibly powerful. And you can already see the drivers behind me were gaining on me fast and they were just going past me. I slide to the right to avoid slowing down the traffic behind me, but I also somehow end up braking just a little bit too early and going down to second gear, which is not necessary. But in hindsight, it's good I did so because I was able to avoid any potential crashes that usually happens at this turn. I brake just enough to let Baby Milo pass and he goes really wide, allowing me to go one position up, but the blue Scirocco comes back on the racing line very slow and pushes me back, and from behind I get catapulted by Baby Milo into the shadow. Thankfully I was able to recover and join back, but I joined in the wrong moment as the driver ahead brakes and I do what Baby Milo did to me and I send him off backing, and again giving myself a penalty. Coming into the third sector for the second time, you can see the drivers behind me already giving each other a lot of headaches, and also up ahead you can see everybody is trying to fight for position in a sector where it's best to avoid contact and get a clean line in as much as possible. As the 2 Americans are fighting for position, I back off just a bit to come out of the corner as cleanly as possible, but I have to slow down anyways to serve my penalty once again. I take a look back and the drivers behind are not as close, but close enough to catch up with me in the first corner, so I decide to get on the defensive and keep my 6th position. I get on the defensive just in time for another driver to make contact at the back, and before I got slingshotted forward, I slowed down and downshifted to make the turn as cleanly as possible. As you can see, a lot of people tend to screw up the turn and just make contact with each other. From here on, I was able to create a considerable gap between the guys at the back, and it was all about trying to make the corners as perfectly as possible, so I can catch up with everybody at the front. And we skip over to the end of the third lap, and since the blue Scirocco has to serve his penalty, I get a free position up front. 5th position is quite the comeback, given I fell back to 7th and even 8th for a brief moment, from all the way back from 2nd, I think. And we skip all the way to the end of the race, coming out of the 3rd sector, where I almost catch up with the 4th and was probably able to overtake if there was one more lap. But yeah, coming 5th was good enough, I think. We are going to do one more race, as I'm trying to keep these videos in the 10-minute margin, and we are starting the race where we finished the last, in 5th. I was able to improve my lap time just a bit, but the drivers in this lobby were of a higher split, so they definitely drove a little bit better than the last guys. Coming into the first corner, braking just as I pass the stands on the left. Thankfully, nobody makes contact from behind as I'm making the turn. Yuri Bento, however, gets a penalty for going over the track limit, but we are all able to get away without a scratch. I also want to give a shout out to the person who made the Martini Racing livery on my car. The name I can't remember right now on the top of my head, but I'll definitely mention his name in the description. We skip to the 3rd sector, and coming up here we have our first victim, as Yuri Bento forgets to brake and goes wide. He comes back onto the tarmac as I'm about to brake and decides my car is a better braking mechanism than his actual brakes and sends me off. I get reset, which in my opinion is worse than trying to rejoin manually, and just as I'm recovering I get pushed once again from behind into the shadow realm. Now I'm all the way back on 11th place and trying to claw my way back to where I was. And to make it worse, I have another car right behind on my tail, ready to send me off for a 3rd time. At this point, I'm just glad that the 2 drivers got a penalty for what they did to me. Coming into the first corner, I get on the defensive and cross my fingers, hoping that the driver behind me understands what braking is and make the turn just as somebody else has completely bottled it and is in a complete stop. But thankfully there wasn't any traffic, so I was able to make a clean getaway. We skipped the entirety of the 2nd lap and I'm still in 10th, which, hey, is still better than 11th. And now I'm able to catch up with the pack up ahead, and as we are coming to the first corner, we go past somebody who's making a lot of donuts on the track. Thankfully he was not making a lot of trouble as he was ghosted out. Coming up on the 8th position, I brake just in time as Garcia goes wide and comes back onto the track right across me, but thankfully he was ghosted, otherwise that would have been the end of the race for me as well. The 2 drivers ahead were driving a bit erratically and making it a bit difficult for me to maintain the slipstream, but sticking to the racing line definitely helped me in gaining on them. Coming into the 3rd sector, I brake at the Dunlop billboard on the right, and the 2 drivers brake just a little bit too late and they go wide and comes back onto the track right on top of me, but just as the driver before, they were ghosted, so thankfully no contact was made and I was able to move up a few positions. And that was pretty much it. There was too much of a gap to catch up to the 5th, so we end the race 1 position below where we started, in 6th. Usually it's races like these that are fun to watch and not the ones where you're at the front where nothing really happens. So yeah, thanks for watching, leave a like and subscribe, and I will see you next week, hopefully in a better race.